In what is now western Poland, between the Warta and the Oder, in the years 1934-1944, the Germans built an impressive structure. It was supposed to protect the eastern border of the country, and it consisted of kilometers of fortifications, over 30 kilometers. A network of tunnels and corridors connects the bunkers. This place is known as the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region, but by naturalists it's known mainly because of bats. In the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region there is a nietoperek reserve, which covers the entire area. This is an extremely valuable place for many bats that come there for wintering during their migrations. Bats, like birds, migrate in autumn from places where they feed and breed in summer to those where they spend the winter. One of the most important wintering places for bats and the largest wintering site in Poland is the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region. Winter is a time when there is no food for bats, because all Polish species feed on insects. For this reason they will return to their normal activity in May and April, and will think about wintering areas again in autumn. Most often, at the end of October, they need to be well fed to accumulate adequate fat reserves, and after that they will hibernate. Such bunkers are perfect places for bats to hibernate. They need places where it will be cool, usually humid, but where they are not threatened by frost. The air temperature should be relatively constant and stay slightly above zero. In connection with the event of counting bats wintering in the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region, which is conducted for many years already, certain dates are set when an international group of chiropterologists, so scientists studying these fascinating mammals, arrives to this area. This year I am lucky to meet them and join the research being conducted here. On the day the counting starts, everyone was busy since the morning. Participants are divided into groups that will look for animals in different parts of the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region, both in freestanding bunkers and in the main system of underground corridors hidden up to 30-50 meters underground. However, it is important to ensure the safety of participants, which is why great importance is attached to compliance with occupational health and safety rules. And the organizers also provide help from trusted medics in the event of an accident. Unfortunately, this can happen, because, especially in bunkers, you need to be vigilant as they are not safe places. Because the number of people who can enter the main corridor system is limited, and my presence would make it impossible for one of the researchers to enter, I will see the surrounding bunkers, where slightly fewer bats hibernate. However, they are also an invaluable shelter for these animals, and an even more interesting object to search for researchers. The bunkers are widely dispersed, sometimes even several kilometers separates them. Although in the past the location of bunkers was probably carefully thought out, today finding some of them is neither obvious nor easy. However, with an experienced group leader, this is not a problem. Bunkers are complex structures, and although their above-ground part is impressive, most of the rooms and corridors are hidden underground and shrouded in impenetrable darkness. After a short reminder of the history of this place and the safety rules, we can get ready, put on our flashlights and go underground, where the animals, for which everyone came here, are hiding. Work has been in full swing from the very beginning. Everyone wants to find the bats and count them reliably. Międzyrzecki Fortified Region and its bats aroused great interest among chiropterologists from all over Europe. Researchers from various countries are present here, from Ireland, Scotland, the Netherlands, Finland, Poland, and many others. However, it is worth noting that people from outside the European Union also come here, from countries such as Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, from whom participation in such research would connect with high costs, but the research organizers finance their stay from their own funds. We managed to find bat droppings, which means that the animals were here, but in the summer. Now we keep looking. It is important to check every place where a bat could hide, and these are small creatures that can squeeze into even the tightest hiding places. It's not surprising, their lives depend on it. The first bats found are always a reason for joy. We'll see in a moment what species we've encountered. We found Natterer's bats. Although people from different parts of the world are present here, they are united by one goal: common passion and positive energy. All these factors ensure that the work is efficient and that you can always count on the help of other team members. Being such a group, learning about research from the inside, watching bats live and having the opportunity to gain knowledge from experienced researchers are certainly invaluable practice also for students of the University of Wrocław, who are also given the opportunity to come to Nietoperek. The educational aspect is very important for the organizers of the annual count. It is obvious that the greatest pleasure comes from finding bats who are not hidden somewhere in pipes, but actually attached to a wall somewhere or hanging from the ceiling, just like in this case. You can also clearly see the way the bat caught the wall, thanks to which it is able to hang like this, practically endlessly. Hanging upside down is a position very characteristic for bats, and is possible thanks to the special adaptations of these mammals. It doesn't require any work from them and doesn't consume energy. The tendons in the bat's foot automatically tighten its toes under the animal's weight, and it doesn't have to do anything else. There are known cases where a bat died in such a position and after death it was still hanging attached to the wall or ceiling. We have 2 bunkers to search today. Bats are found in numerous nooks and crannies, but they also hang freely on walls or ceilings. During hibernation, their vital functions slow down significantly. The heart rate drops to just a few per minute, and the body temperature approaches that of the surroundings. In such a corridor, bats mainly hang from the ceiling and walls. Sometimes, unfortunately, you can also find a dead bat. It's sad, but at the same time it also gives you the opportunity to take a closer look at these animals. The cause of death could not be determined there. As we can see, there are several bats in this place. Several bats are sleeping in one place.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Why bats hibernate together? Are they doing that to regulate the temperature?
I think several means for buffering temperature, and of course bats are social animals, so there are all social activities. Here's a group of 11 barb-style bats. And if they have the possibility, they hibernate together.
Great, thank you.
It is worth noting that bats in a group wake up less often during hibernation because changes in ambient temperature do not affect them at the same extent as solitary animals. In addition, hibernating bats sometimes need to wake up to drink and replenish lost water reserves in their bodies. However, the air humidity in the group is higher, which limits the number of energy-intensive awakenings. Each bat, however, must be recorded. The group leader, a very experienced researcher, carefully lists each individual and marks the species to which it belongs. Although identifying the species of hibernating bats is often not easy, each year only a small percentage of animals counted remain untagged. Much of this is due to experienced chiropterologists. There should be at least 2 in each group who can determine with 100% certainty the species of the bat they encounter. Most often, it is one person from Poland and one from abroad. When the research was over, we could go up from the ground with the feeling of a job well done. In their minds, however, everyone was still with the bats somewhere underground. Meanwhile, I made an appointment with the organizers of the entire event, who agreed to answer a few questions about both bats and the research itself conducted in the Nietoperek Reserve. My interlocutors are Dr. Tomasz Kokurewicz, a national expert in bat protection, and Dr. Grzegorz Apoznański from the Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences.
Witam wszystkich
Hello to all YouTubers and nature enthusiasts on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, this program, I mean the research program, the bat monitoring program, started when you were not born yet, in 1999. So we have already had over 20 years of research behind us. And it turns out that we are already starting to understand something about bats, but there are still more questions than answers. Well, it's been 25 years, right? 24, sorry, it's 2023. Well, that's a big project, right? The presence of international experts here in the area also proves this. I wanted to ask if this place is of key importance for bats on a European scale. Why is there so much interest among researchers also from abroad? Definitely yes. Well, bats hibernate due to the fact that they have little food at this time of the year. And the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region is an amazing complex of underground fortifications that are over 32 kilometers long in total. And in these underground corridors there are ideal conditions for bats to hibernate. The Newtoparek Reserve is one of the 10 largest wintering grounds in the European Union and attracts bats from several hundred kilometers away. Ringing research was conducted in Germany. Like birds, bats can be ringed. It's rare to not expose them to unnecessary damage or stress, but there was such a large operation in Germany, and by reading these rings we are able to determine from where the bat came to us. And in the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region we have found bats who had flown over 250 kilometers to hibernate here. Therefore, this place has a very significant impact not only on the chiropterofauna of Poland, but basically of the entire region and Central Europe. It is also the largest wintering site of this type in the north. Most of these top 10 places are further south. There are many such large bat wintering sites in Romania, France and Bulgaria. But ladies and gentlemen, if we look at the effectiveness of our activities, by protecting bats at a critical moment of their life cycle, it means in winter, in a relatively small area, we have the possibility to guarantee the continuation of the population of these many species of bats in a huge area of the Central European lowlands. So it's just a certain logic that our actions here should be effective and translate into something bigger. Especially, let's start from the beginning. The Polish language is very creative. Most languages call bats some kind of flying mouse. Of course they are not mouse, because they are not rodents, they are bats. They are a completely different order of mammals and the second most numerous. There are about 1,500 species of bats in the world, so almost a quarter of all mammals are bats. This is a group that has achieved enormous evolutionary success. There are bats that eat fruit, there are bats that eat insects, they eat fish, frogs. Of course we don't have any of those. The ones that are in our country basically eat only insects. And now it's important because among these insects there are also mosquitoes and blackflies. A single bat can eat several thousand mosquitoes in one night. Therefore, they are extremely beneficial to the environment and are extremely valuable. They are natural reducers of insects that we humans subjectively call problematic. So the more bats we have, the fewer mosquitoes we have, the fewer crop pests we have. Blackflies are quite nasty. Unfortunately, black flies in the Lubusz voivodeship are present all the time. In Scotland, for example, in Ireland, in Sweden, where we also went to study bats with a friend, it is simply a real plague. So we can rely on bats to, let's say, biologically combat these annoying insects and pests of crops and forests. And it also has an economic aspect because the Americans have made such calculations. Because that's where they have, in the Middle West, they have corn and cotton. And it turned out that these are the most important crops, And now they ask themselves how much money they would save because there are bats that eat these pests of corn and cotton. And it turned out to be billions of dollars on a larger scale. And look, they eat these pests for free. And there are no chemicals involved. Well, because chemicals are generally not good when it comes to our health, so we don't use these chemicals to fight insects, and it just happens. So even if someone is not convinced by ecological arguments, maybe they are convinced by economic ones, right? Yes, I mean, first of all, you have to, it is about simply getting to know first, to study, right? When we do the research, we know how it all works in this nature. It's not just about bats, right? Because bats are part of the whole, so we just have to understand. Grzegorz and I are scientists, which means we simply study nature. Bats in particular. And we also teach students at the Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences, and our task is simply to learn about it. And once we know it, we know how to protect it and how, let's say, to preserve this nature and these bats for future generations. That is for you, right? Here I'm looking at the camera. It's also worth mentioning, we all see it's 2023, we had the warmest New Year's Eve I remember. It was 16 degrees in Wrocław at night. The climate is getting warmer and well-isolated underground shelters, such as Nietoperek, reflect the average annual temperature in a given area. Since the research mentioned by Dr. Kokurewicz started, which was in the 1990s, the temperature in this region has increased by 2.5 degrees. This is basically in line with the most pessimistic predictions about temperature increases. This is reflected in the temperature underground. This affects the conditions surrounding hibernating bats. The species composition of bats that are found underground, and there are 12 different species of them, each species has different needs, different preferences. This equilibrium that was here, this balance, was somehow disturbed, and this species composition has changed completely in just 20 years. Now thermophilic species are replacing cold-loving species. Additionally, there are 27 species of bats in our country. When I started getting interested in bats, there were 24 of them. Yes, 23. In just a few years, well, maybe not a few, in a decade, 3 new species appeared. These species came to us from the south, and in one point of view it is good, because our chiropter fauna is enriched with these 3 species. But on the other hand, it is bad, because the species that were here now have new competitors, food competitors. So there is a limited amount of food that they now have to share with their colleagues from the south. And they are reluctant to share, because food resources are always limited in nature. So unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion at the moment. And first of all, we try to understand it somehow. As I said, there are more questions than answers to maybe counteract this somehow or develop some scenarios for the next dozen or so years. What will happen, how it will happen, whether species will become extinct or not, and there's a serious threat that those species that, for example, choose low wintering temperatures, let's say within 3 degrees, will move their range to the north of Europe, right? But on the other hand, those species that are already there will not find colder places, because there may simply be no such places anymore. Exactly. Our passion, our work, are bats, and it's a small piece of the whole puzzle. But there are tree specialists, crop specialists. The way the climate is changing is reflected in the whole. We are part of this ecosystem. We rely on fruits, cereals. Understanding how this whole works is extremely important. We'll probably have to, plant millet or sorghum in a few years. I hope that the next war, hopefully there won't be one, won't break out over water, right? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the problem is a side effect of these climate changes. We are simply running out of water, and it is clearly visible in the underground. When we started this project 20 years ago, there was water everywhere. Currently, the underground is drying out, the groundwater level is lowering, and there are species of bats that require high air humidity to effectively hibernate and survive the winter. This can be easily related to the temperature we feel, right? If it's humid, it feels colder, right? Hence the dissonance between the air temperature and the sense temperature. The same is with bat hibernation. Humidity affects hibernation conditions. Well, we're only talking about bats for now, but the decline in groundwater affects, for example, trees, crops and lakes which are drying up. So it's all quite disturbing, at least for now. And this is why it is even more important to understand these processes. To understand, because if we have some knowledge, then we can take all our actions, whatever they may be, whether it is about species protection, bat protection, forests or wetlands. And wetlands too. I don't know if we will have any swamps in Poland anymore. A very interesting ecosystem. Or anything else. We have to understand it first, and that is our job. So bats they belong to the group of animals that we should be worried about in the context of climate change, because we don't know exactly what the future will bring, right? Couldn't this disrupt their hibernation system? Yes, it disrupts the entire nature. First of all, I think that the animals that are most vulnerable for climate change from our subjective point of view are humans. Well, because, as I said, we are part of this system. It's worth googling a place in Pakistan. It's called Jacobabad. It is important because it is the first city in the world. You know, Pakistan, the former Persian Empire, the Silk Road. There was the city of Jacobabad, rich, beautiful, the capital of the province. You're not talking about a small village here, but about a city like Wrocław or Warsaw, the capital of the region. A few years ago, Jacobabad recorded for the first time a temperature that was above the threshold that is deadly to humans. It's not that it's unpleasant because we sweat, it's just that there is a cut-off temperature, higher than in Death Valley in Arizona. Except Death Valley in Arizona has an enticing name that suggests it's not very livable there, but Jacobabad was clearly a bustling center of culture and civilization. Not many people pay attention to this because of where Jacobabad is at the moment, but cities like Lisbon and Madrid are also exposed to increasing changes. It's coming from the south. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we study bats not only in Poland, but also in other countries, thanks to the fact that we cooperate with our colleagues from Western, Northern and Eastern Europe. And this year, as part of the Erasmus program, I had the pleasure of going to Portugal to study bats with students. And ladies and gentlemen, I saw a river that dried up before my eyes. A river in the town of Ebeso. When I returned to Poland, I realized that I was in paradise. Everything is just beautiful and green, right? The streams are flowing, so unfortunately this is the worst case scenario. As Tomek told us using the example of what is happening in the south, I will in return give an example from the north. This is counterintuitive, but as the climate warms up, there is less snow and it is warmer in winter, and therefore bats freeze. They freeze, igloo. The snow that lies on the cracks in the rocks is a great insulator, right? That's why the Eskimos build igloos. Now, when there is no snow and winter shelters are not insulated, the perceived temperature is so low that they are unable to hibernate effectively. So once again, there are simply effects that we might not have thought about before, but they happened, right? And now, in winter, we have bats here in bunkers, in corridors, in tunnels. We can see them, count them, do the research. When hibernation ends, when spring, the warmer season comes, will the bats fly away and they will no longer be here in the area, in these bunkers and corridors? Or will they be here all the time, all year round? It depends on the species, right? There is not one bat, bats are many. In Poland 27, in MFR 12. Some bats end hibernation earlier. Again, bats hibernate because there is no food available. When food is available, they become active. Depending on what a given species feeds on, it starts its activity when it is energetically profitable for it. It's worth flying for him if he can eat enough. And now, due to climate change, plants are also starting to pollen earlier. By pollinating, plants attract insects, or moths. It means food for bats. So again, the whole system is a bit dysregulated. Thus, bats that have been hibernating longer may decide to leave earlier. Some bat species migrate, just like birds, some lead a rather sedentary lifestyle. So to answer your question, some will stay here, in this region, some will fly away a bit further. It is variable. We are in the Lubusz region. It is a beautiful part of Poland. The most forested voivodeship. That's right, the most forested voivodeship of all in the country. And here, if I remember correctly, 49%, about 50, I don't remember the exact value. So 50-50, this is really the highest ratio. Therefore, the bats that winter here, some of them forage in forests, are actually close to the forest and simply look for food there. Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, the largest bat that hibernates underground, the greater mouse-ear bat, well, if it has its wings spread, it's that big, right? Well, this bat feeds on the ground and catches running beetles, the so-called ground beetles, Carabidae. So these beetles are associated with forests. But this is a more complicated picture, because in order to catch such a beetle, the bat has to locate it. He doesn't use his sonar anymore, he just hears it. He has to land on the ground to catch him, right? And now, if it is, for example, a forest overgrown with some bushes, or undergrowth, or grass, then this bat has no chance. Therefore, it needs, for example, beech forests, where there are these dead leaves, right, lying around. There is no grass or bushes there, and the bat can clearly hear the beetle crawling these dry leaves. He can locate him, he can catch him, right? Therefore, this species is associated with beech forests. And look what's happening with the beech forests. Beech forests are endangered, they are being cut down, and the same is true with old pines, right? Because a bat doesn't care whether it is a beech forest or an old pine, as long as there is no undergrowth, right? And in such old pine forests, this bat, the greater mouse-eared bat, also has a chance to hear, locate and catch this beetle that is running on the ground. We also need to know such things in order to say, well, this beech forest is needed for bats, yes? This old pine forest too, please don't cut it down, right? Well, that's where bats feed. We can go there and prove that they feed there, right? So this is a complicated picture, because we have to ensure that they can hibernate underground, safely, in peace and quiet, right? It's also worth mentioning, peace and quiet. And at the same time, in the summer, they must have places where they can feed, because that is when they give birth and raise their young, feed them with milk like all mammals. Regarding peace and quiet, when a bat hibernates, it goes into torpor, lowers its metabolism, lowers its body temperature, and sleeps deeply, deeply. Every time we wake him up, or when he wakes up on his own, he must rise his body temperature and be able to be active and fly again. Each time such an animal wakes up, it is very energetically expensive for it. Due to the fact that food resources are limited in winter, hence hibernation, if such a bat is frightened by loud behavior in bunkers, or touched and wakes up more times than he was prepared for, it had reserves available for this, which is collected in the autumn, he had it planned because nature also plans. Exactly. Well, I will not mince words. He will simply not make it, will not survive till spring, and there will be one bat less. He will be dead. And that is why you should avoid loud calls in such bunkers, forts and basements during bat hibernation. It's best not to go there at all. It's best not to go inside. Don't scare, just don't scare bats during hibernation, this is a good solution. This period lasts from the beginning of November to the end of March. So during this period you must be especially quiet and careful when wandering around all kinds of caves, bunkers and other fortifications. Yes, the bat is indeed sleeping, don't wake me up, that's just what they could say. Besides, you know, this is also a complicated situation again, hence these questions and answers, right? If we wake up one bat, he wakes up other bats. They show solidarity with these bats. They are also related to each other, hibernating together. So the bat will wakes up the others and warns them. He says, not good, listen, people came here, it will be bad, right? Therefore, this is such a cascade. The few bats will wake up, cause more and more bats to wake up. And this cascade lasts up 8 hours until they calm down. So it's not like we're going to wake up the bat or 3 and everything will actually be okay. No, they will keep waking up. For example, in the case of illegal tourism in the Międzyrzecki Fortified Region, if this cascade continues and before it ends a new group appears and wakes other bats, then the whole cycle resets, right? This means that they will simply be in this rhythm of waking each other up all the time, without falling into this correct, long-lasting sleep, because bats also wake up on their own from time to time. Of course, they have it included in their energy budget. They have to wake up to drink water, for example, because they evaporate all the time. Well, it just makes biological sense. Yes, and if it gets stuck in such a cycle, it will end with death, in the best scenario of individuals, in the worst of the entire population. We can do something. Just don't enter, don't scare away, don't wake up the bats during their hibernation periods. Stay on designed roads. Of course, of course. We have already mentioned bat ringing. During such research, cutting hibernating bats, if you find one with a ring, is it a good opportunity to read the ring and learn something about it? Whenever it's possible, we read the rings or take a photo. But without catching bats. Yes, without catching. If it's impossible to read the ring without removing the bat from the wall or ceiling, then the animal's well-being is above the feedback from the ring. It's worth adding this interesting fact here. Bat rings are not rings. They're omega-shaped, right? Like a circle with two pipes at the bottom. And such rings are placed on the forearm, and the point is that the ring must be able to move freely on the forearm. And in the past, when bat rings were used, when the technology was a bit worse, these rings were made of metal. They were quite rough. There were cases where the flight membrane was damaged and the bat was harmed. Therefore, in general, ringing is limited to the minimum. With well-justified research, an implant is generally avoided. Yes, well, we have other tools at the moment, fortunately. For example, we can study the genetic structure of bat populations. We can study stable isotopes to know where they came from, right? Well, in different places in Europe, the concentration of these stable isotopes is different. So during examining bats, for example, we cut off some of the hair and analyze the composition of stable isotopes in this hair, and this will tell us whether they came from northern Germany or, for example, northern Czech Republic, right? Because these combinations of these isotopes are unique, and they allow us to assign a given bat to a given region. Generally, we are talking about hydrogen isotopes, nitrogen 2, and another ones. We also have such tests planned here because we have a laboratory in Spain that will do it for us. So perhaps we will learn more about the total area of migration here to us, to the underground. And let's say that an average Kowalski, well, I don't know, I take a photo of a bat that has a ring. I will be able to read something from it, but I don't have a chance to cut the hair and test the sample. Is it possible to send this data from this ring somewhere? Where should I report it and what can I find out then? Well, please contact Mr. Rafał. Mr. Rafał will find us and give us this data. You can definitely find out not only what species it is, but also what individual it is, whether it is a male or a female, and where it was caught. Another piece of information that can only be gathered from rings is age. And this is an interesting thing. Another difference between rodents and bats. Bats are extremely long-lived. Despite its small size, the longest living bat has reached the age of 40. And we're talking about a really small animal here. So small that in this group of 1,500 species of bats, there is a species that is considered the smallest possible size of a mammal. I mean, he's fighting for the first place with some shrew, but we're with bats, not shrews. Definitely. Chrysonecteris tonglongai. It is an exotic animal. He lives in Myanmar. Yes, and this guy is smaller than the tip of your thumb. Well, it weighs about 2 grams. The whole animal. Yes, 2 grams. A flying, warm-blooded animal. Like a bumblebee. An animal that can maintain its body temperature, right? It is the smallest possible species of mammal. So, as you know, Bats, like all wild mammals, transmit various diseases, for example rabies. Well, just like squirrels and cats in the basement. Exactly. And this is what I say to my students, that it is nothing unusual, because the squirrel Basha in the park also carries rabies. And if you eat Basha the squirrel, there will probably be various other attractions as well. Exactly. All of our cats, all of our dogs that we love so much also carry rabies. But unfortunately, bats also carry rabies. And because they have a generally bad opinion, because bats are actually generally disliked, unlike Basha the squirrel, let's add rabies and then there's a bit of panic, right? However, it is worth clarifying here that they are disliked basically only in our culture. Yes, but let me finish. Of course, if you want to read this ring, don't let yourself be bitten just in case. I mean, that's a general rule, don't get bitten by a wild animal. Makes sense. All of them can transmit rabies, right? How do we deal with rabies? We are vaccinated against rabies. Well, that's it. And we always work with bats using gloves. Yes, exactly. So we are also very autistic, as you can see, right? Because we took 3 vaccines last year. Oh no, sorry, I took a dozen. Exactly. Because apart from the COVID and flu ones, I also took 3 doses for rabies. I expect to get free coffee with the 10th. So there is a solution, right? Moreover, all our students must also be vaccinated, because it may simply happen. Well, it's just a simple rule. If you work with wild animals, whatever they are, well, of course, when the bat is faster than the student, and it often happens, then it's too much of risk, right? And then these doses of the so-called post-exposure vaccine, you simply have to spend another day in the hospital. Well, we don't want to send students to the hospital for 2 days, it's just better to get vaccinated. Depending on the year in which the count takes place, it's obvious that the results are different, whether it is the number of individuals or the number of species. What are the trends and changes in the number of bats here? Overall, speak. Please. In general, the number of bats as a whole is increasing, which is good. Only the species composition changes. But the number of thermophilic species is increasing, so those that, for example, feel best when wintering at the temperature of 7 to 9 degrees, let's say greater mouse-eared bats. This is a bit of a paradox from the point of view of environmental protection, because all bats are protected, and among them there are bats that are very protected. They are listed in the so-called Annex 2 of the European Union's Habitats Directive. In short, this is a sufficient basis to establish a Natura 2000 area if there is one of such bats. And now at MFR we have four species from the Habitats Directive, 2 of which have extreme thermal preferences. Barbastella barbastellus, are black, little black ones. Small black bats, the only black bat in Poland, easy to recognize. They prefer cool hibernation conditions, while the greater mouse-eared bats, also from Annex 2 of the Habitats Directive, prefer warmer conditions. And now it is a bit of a paradox, because it is both good and bad, because the number of these very protected bats, the greater mouse-eared bats, myotis, is increasing, because it is getting warmer, but these equally rare, if not rarer, Barbastella barbastellus, is decreasing, because they just need 3 degrees, and it's getting harder and harder to find 3 degrees underground, because these undergrounds are getting warmer, just like everything else around them. They warm up, dry out. Yes, these conditions change all the time. Exactly. We also need to focus on these species whose numbers are decreasing, get to know their biology, habitat requirements, and that's why we study the Barbastella, right? And this is happening quite intensively now, so that we can possibly know how to prevent this decline in numbers and what will happen next. Whether they will die or not, well, that's worth knowing. Or maybe they'll pack and move further east or north. Yes, where it's colder. So this is what the data collected here is used for? To develop some protection programs? Yes, of course. As I mentioned, this is an initiative at the European Union community level, and Natura 2000 areas are a general EU network. And now one of the elements of this annual count is preparing a report about the state of preservation of these protected objects. It means the species that occur there. And now, after doing this for many years, we can capture certain trends. Which populations are growing, which are declining, and now maybe some modifications could be made here, for example to increase attractiveness of the place. Unfortunately, the equipment can surprise you. The memory card may fill up and the battery may run out at the most unfortunate moments. I also asked why my interlocutors decided to work professionally with bats and devote so much of their time and energy to them, since these animals unfortunately do not have good PR and they do not arouse widespread sympathy in the society. Dr. Kokurewicz replied that he had always wanted to work with mammals, and at the time when he decided to specialize, we knew so little about bats, they were so poorly researched, and we had such limited equipment and methods for researching these animals, that this black hole simply sacked him. Dr. Apoznański, on the other hand, confessed that he always wanted to be a naturalist and dreamed about exploring hard-to-reach places. When he noticed that studying bats could combine both of these passions, he became completely devoted to this task. Small, beautiful, fascinating, and above all, underestimated. Unique animals for which people can travel hundreds of kilometers. They arouse admiration in me and in the people I have met here, and I hope that others will also be able to see in them what we see in them. It was an amazing experience. Most of us rarely think about bats, and many people are even afraid of them for some reason. Meanwhile, they are just trying to live, most often in hiding, and in winter they hang quietly somewhere in hard-to-reach places, or hide in some crevices. I am glad I could meet them, and what's even more important, I could observe them in the company of truly excellent chiropterologists. It was a fantastic journey into the little-known world of flying mammals.